So here's a really common mistake that I see a lot of new and experienced teachers making in their own classes. It's, shoot, just a second. Ah, here it is. You're not ready. If you're making this simple and seemingly innocent mistake in your classes, then there's a good chance that you are making your life a lot more difficult because you're training your students to ignore you. So if you want to find out more about this common mistake and what you can do about it, keep watching. Welcome to Star Teacher Training. This is the channel for EFL teachers with large classes of preschool and primary school students. My name is Will, and over the years, I've had the opportunity to observe dozens and dozens of teachers in more than 100 lessons. And during that time, I noticed that there's one thing that a lot of teachers do that's a big mistake that they often excuse themselves for, but causes a lot of problems for them down the line. And that is when teachers are in class and they get everyone's attention on them so that they can start giving instructions or start an activity or present some new material, they begin and then they realize, oh no, I've forgotten something. And then they go over to their bag or their desk and they're hunting through their materials looking for something until they get it. And during that time, their students are just sitting and waiting and watching with nothing to do. Now, this is a really easy mistake to make. I've made it, and I know many teachers have made it. And if you do it once or twice in a semester or a year, it's not a huge deal. But if it's something that your students are seeing every week or often, then it can cause a really big problem for you as the teacher as it starts to train your students to ignore you. This is because it violates a basic rule, which is to get respect, you have to give respect. And in these moments, your students see that you don't respect their time and their attention. And in fact, in these moments, you're training them that their good behavior isn't going to be rewarded with a fun activity or some new interesting information. Instead, it's going to be rewarded with awkwardness and boredom. So that every time you do this, you're going to get less and less buy-in from your students, less and less attention, and less eagerness to participate in your classes. Because your students aren't going to be expecting to get anything good in return for their attention. Now, when I've talked with teachers about this, I've heard a lot of excuses. For example, well, it's just a little mistake, or it only took a second, or, well, the kids were still being quiet, so what's the big deal? But I can tell you that as a fly sitting on the back of the wall, watching these lessons, that it is a big deal, because time comes to a crawl. And all of the momentum of the lesson just stops. And the energy in the students plummets as they sit there and look around uncomfortably and wait and start to feel like, oh, what's going on? If this is something that you've done and you're finding it harder to get your students' attention, then you need to stop and break this habit as soon as possible before it gets any worse. So here are my 5 tips for how to improve your performance. These are tips that I've used on myself and I've given to other teachers. My first tip is, don't give yourself any excuses. This is a mistake that I made a long time, where I was just giving myself excuse after excuse after excuse for making this mistake. I didn't think it was a big deal. It wasn't until I started observing other teachers that I saw how much chaos this small mistake could do. So if you're doing this, stop giving yourself excuses. Recognize it and say, this is a problem and I need to change it. My second tip for you is keep notes. It's really easy to forgive and to forget if you're not keeping notes and you're not taking the time to pause and reflect after a lesson and just jot down a few things about what went well and what didn't go well. If you're not writing things down, it's hard to find the patterns in your behavior. So even just a small notebook that you take a minute or two after each lesson, write down a couple things and it can really help your performance over the long term. My third tip for you is pack your materials together. Everything that you're going to need for each stage or each activity, put it together in a pack like this. You can keep things together with rubber bands or clips so that you can just go into class and when you're ready for that stage, you just grab that pack and you know you've got everything you need in the pack ready to go. My fourth tip for you is to also keep a checklist. I keep one on my phone with an app called Evernote, and I just have a checklist of all of the things that I need in my lessons. Just a standard list that I have, and I go through before I show up to my school or before I show up to my classes, and I know I have everything that I need for class. That way, when I'm standing in front of my students, I don't have any last minute freakouts where I'm like, did I forget something? And then I go and I have to check because I'm not confident that I have those things. I know that because I went through my checklist, I have everything that I could possibly need. My fifth and my last tip for you is give yourself time to prepare in class. It's okay during an activity or after an activity is finished and the students are winding down to take 10 or 15 seconds to prepare for the next stage. A lot of teachers feel this rush where they always have to be doing something with the students during class. And so they rush into the next stage and start giving instructions before they're really ready. And then they cause this mistake. And instead, just take a couple moments for yourself. It's okay if your students are kind of waiting for you, but you haven't given your students the request for their attention. It's okay for them to have a little bit of downtime as long as they know that you're doing something to get ready for them and you haven't asked them for their attention. That way, you're not disrespecting their time and their attention. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video to be interesting and useful. If you did, don't forget to click like and subscribe. And if you're looking for more content on teaching large classes of preschool or primary school students, don't forget to go to starteachertraining.com. And finally, in the comment section below, what other mistakes do teachers commonly make in their classes? I'd love to hear your ideas. Thanks again for watching. See you soon.